Lila Dawson walked slowly along the narrow path that wound its way through the old cemetery. Her boots crunched softly on the gravel as she moved, the sound blending with the distant chirping of birds overhead. It was Sunday morning, and like every other Sunday for the past 3 years, she was here to visit Daniel's grave. The routine never changed. She woke up early, brewed a pot of coffee, packed fresh flowers into a basket, and drove the 20 minutes to this quiet place where he rested. This cemetery wasn't large or fancy. There were no grand statues or elaborate mausoleums, just rows of simple stones marking the lives of ordinary people who had lived and died. But to Lila, it felt right. It matched the kind of man Daniel had been. Kind, steady, unassuming. He hadn't needed anything flashy in life, so why should his final resting place be any different? As she approached his grave, her steps slowed even more. The sight of his name carved into the stone always hit her hard, no matter how many times she saw it. Daniel Dawson, beloved husband. Those words seemed too small to capture everything he had meant to her, too short to describe the laughter they had shared, the dreams they had built together, the emptiness left behind when he was gone. She knelt down carefully, setting the basket of flowers beside her. Today, she had brought a mix of yellow daisies and white lilies. Yellow because it reminded her of sunshine, of warmth, of all the happy moments they had spent together. White because it symbolized peace, something she still struggled to find after losing him. The air smelled faintly of damp earth and grass, carried by a gentle breeze that rustled the leaves of the nearby trees. Autumn was creeping in, painting the edges of the leaves with hints of gold and red. Lila took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. Visiting Daniel always stirred up emotions she worked hard to keep tucked away during the rest of the week. Sadness, anger, longing. They all bubbled closer to the surface here, where memories of him felt so close. With practiced hands, she began clearing away the dried leaves and twigs that had gathered around the base of the gravestone. This was part of her ritual, too. Keeping his space tidy gave her a sense of purpose, however small. As she worked, her fingers brushed against the soil at the very bottom of the stone. Something didn't feel quite right. Instead of the firm resistance she expected, the ground shifted slightly under her touch. Frowning, Lila leaned closer, brushing away more dirt with her hands. At first, she thought maybe it was just loose soil, but then she noticed an indentation, a circular shape that looked almost deliberate. Curiosity tugged at her, and she dug a little deeper, her movements careful but determined. Her heart skipped a beat when her fingertips brushed against something cold and smooth. Metal. She froze, staring at the spot in disbelief. What could possibly be buried here? The cemetery was old, yes, but surely someone would have mentioned finding something like this before. Unless it had been hidden on purpose. Lila hesitated, glancing around nervously. The cemetery was empty except for her. The only sounds were the rustling leaves and the occasional bird call. No one else was nearby to see what she had found. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that she shouldn't be doing this. That disturbing. Whatever lay beneath might lead to trouble, but curiosity won out over caution. Slowly, she widened the hole, her pulse quickening with each passing second. The metal turned out to be part of a hatch, its surface rough with rust but still intact. Dirt clung stubbornly to its edges, making it difficult to see clearly, but there was no mistaking what it was. Someone or something had buried this here long ago. For a moment, Lila sat back on her heels, staring at the hatch in stunned silence. Questions swirled in her mind. Who had put it here? Why bury it beneath a grave? And most importantly, what was inside? She reached out tentatively, running her fingers over the cool surface. It felt strange, almost unnatural, as if it didn't belong to the world she knew. Her rational side screamed at her to stop, to cover it back up and walk away. But another part of her, the part that missed Daniel so fiercely it ached, whispered that maybe this was important. Maybe it was connected to him somehow. After all, it had been buried right next to his grave. That couldn't be a coincidence, could it? Taking a deep breath, Lila gripped the edge of the hatch and pulled. It didn't budge at first, stuck fast, in the earth after who knew how many years. But she tried again, putting more strength into it this time. With a groan of protest, the hatch finally gave way, swinging open just enough to reveal a dark opening beneath. Peering inside, Lila saw nothing but shadows. The hole led downward, disappearing into blackness. She grabbed her flashlight from her bag. It was something she always carried with her, and clicked it on, shining the beam into the gap. The light revealed a narrow tunnel, its walls lined with smooth stone. Strange symbols were carved into the surface, glowing faintly in response to the light. They looked ancient, alien, unlike anything she had ever seen before. Her stomach churned with a mix of fear and excitement. This was madness. She should leave now, go home, and pretend she had never found this. Yet, at the same time, she couldn't bring herself to turn away. Something about those symbols called to her, drawing her gaze like a magnet. They seemed to pulse faintly, as though alive, urging her to take one step further. Lila glanced over her shoulder once more, half expecting to see someone watching her. But the cemetery remained empty, silent except for the wind whispering through the trees. Taking a deep breath, she slipped the flashlight into her pocket and lowered herself into the opening, her heart pounding wildly in her chest. The air grew cooler as she descended, carrying with it a strange scent, sharp and metallic mixed with the dampness of earth. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if gravity itself was pulling her down toward some unknown fate. But she kept going, driven by a mixture of dread and determination. By the time she reached the bottom, her legs were trembling and her palms were slick with sweat. She stood in a wide chamber, illuminated dimly by flickering lights embedded in the walls. In the center of the room was a pedestal, holding a crystalline orb that pulsed with an inner light. Around it lay objects that defied explanation, tools, fragments of material, and shards of glass-like substance etched with unfamiliar writing. Lila stared at the scene before her mind struggling to process what she was seeing. This place? It wasn't human. It couldn't be. And yet it was here, hidden beneath the earth, waiting for someone to find it, waiting for her. For a long moment she simply stood there, frozen in awe and terror. Then a voice echoed through the chamber, soft but clear, sending shivers down her spine. "You shouldn't be here," it said. Lila spun around, her flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. "Who's there?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. No one answered, but she knew deep down that this was only the beginning. The voice echoed again, softer this time but still clear enough to make Lila's heart race. "You shouldn't be here," it repeated, the words resonating not just in her ears but deep within her chest, as though they were meant to be felt, rather than heard. Lila tightened her grip on the flashlight, her knuckles white against the cold metal. She turned slowly in place, sweeping the beam of light across the chamber. Shadows danced along the walls, making the glowing symbols seem alive, shifting subtly under the flickering illumination. But there was no one visible, no figure standing. In the darkness, no movement beyond the faint shimmer of the orb on the pedestal. "Who's there?" she called out again, her voice stronger now despite the tremor underneath. She tried to sound brave, but the weight of the situation pressed down on her like a physical force. This wasn't supposed to happen. Graves weren't supposed to hide secret tunnels leading to mysterious chambers filled with whatever this was. The silence stretched for several long seconds, heavy and suffocating. Just when Lila thought she might have imagined the voice, a figure stepped forward from the shadows near the far wall. At first glance, it looked human, or at least humanoid. But as it moved closer, the details became unsettlingly wrong. Its skin shimmered faintly, like liquid silver catching the light, and its eyes glowed with an unnatural blue hue. It was tall, taller than most people, and its limbs seemed slightly too long, its movements fluid yet unfamiliar. Lila stumbled backward instinctively, nearly tripping over her own feet. Her mind raced, trying to process what she was seeing. Was this some kind of hallucination? Had she hit her head while climbing down into the tunnel? None of it made sense, but the figure before her felt real, solid, undeniable. "I mean you no harm," the being said, raising one hand in what might have been a gesture of peace. Its voice didn't come from its mouth, though. It seemed to echo directly inside her head, bypassing her ears entirely. The sensation was jarring, like having someone whisper secrets into your thoughts without permission. What are you?" Lila managed to choke out, clutching the flashlight tightly as if it could somehow protect her. Her breath came in, shallow gasps, and her pulse thundered in her ears. "My kind has watched yours for centuries," the creature replied, its tone calm and measured. "We are observers, guardians of balance. You may call me Kale." "Guardians?" Lila echoed, her voice barely above a whisper. Her mind struggled to keep up with the absurdity of the situation. Aliens? Guardians? Observers? None of it fit into the world she knew, the world she had lived in until just moments ago. Kale nodded, or at least tilted its head in a way that might have passed for a nod. "Yes. We have guided your species quietly, ensuring you do not destroy yourselves before your time. But we withdrew when your technology began to evolve rapidly. Humanity grows dangerous when it learns too much." Lila blinked, trying to focus. Her thoughts were a chaotic swirl of confusion, fear, and disbelief. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked finally, her voice trembling. "Why am I here?" Kyle paused, studying her with those glowing eyes. There was something almost human about its expression. A sadness, or perhaps regret, that made Lila hesitate. Despite everything, she didn't feel threatened. Not exactly. More like overwhelmed. "This place was hidden for a reason," Kyle said after a moment. "It was never meant to be found. Not by anyone like you. Yet here you stand, drawn to it as though fate itself conspired to bring you here." Lila frowned, shaking her head slightly. "I don't understand. I just came to visit my husband's grave. I wasn't looking for whatever this is." At the mention of Daniel, Kale's expression shifted subtly. "Your husband," it said, the words carrying a weight that made Lila's stomach twist. "His death was no accident." Her breath caught in her throat, and for a moment she couldn't speak. "What do you mean?" she whispered hoarsely. "He died in a car crash, that's what everyone said." Kyle took a step closer, its movements graceful and deliberate. "There are forces at work in your world that seek to uncover truths best. Left buried, your husband stumbled upon something he should not have seen. His death was a consequence of that discovery." Lila's knees felt weak, and she reached out to steady herself against the pedestal. The crystalline orb pulsed gently beneath her fingertips, its light growing brighter as if responding to her emotions. "No," she murmured, shaking her head again. "That can't be true. He was just Daniel. He didn't know anything. He did not know," Kale interrupted gently. "But his curiosity led him to places where such knowledge could be found. And others noticed." Tears welled up in Lila's eyes, blurring her vision. She clenched her fists, fighting back the wave of grief and anger that threatened to overwhelm her. "Why are you telling me this now?" she demanded, her voice rising. "Why wait 3 years? Why show yourself to me at all?" Kyle hesitated, its luminous gaze fixed on her face. "Because you share his curiosity," it said simply, "and because you carry his loss. You are connected to him in ways that transcend mere memory. That connection brought you here." Lila stared at the being, her mind reeling. Everything it said sounded impossible, insane even. But deep down, a part of her believed it. Maybe it was the way Kale spoke, with a quiet certainty that brooked no argument. Or maybe it was the strange familiarity of the symbols carved into the walls, as if she had seen them somewhere before in a dream. "What happens now?" she asked finally, her voice steadier than she expected. "What do you want from me?" Kale gestured toward the pedestal where the orb continued to glow softly. "This contains knowledge," it explained. "Knowledge of your world, of ours, of the universe beyond. It holds answers to questions you may not yet realize you have. But it also carries risks. To take it is to accept responsibility for what it reveals. Lila glanced at the orb, her heart pounding. The thought of touching it, of unlocking whatever secrets lay within, both terrified and intrigued her. What could it possibly show her? Would it explain Daniel's death? Would it give her closure or only open new wounds? And if I leave it? She asked cautiously. Then you return to your life unchanged, Cal replied. But know this. Once you leave, this place will seal itself forever. You will never find it again. Lila swallowed hard, torn between fear and determination. She thought of Daniel, of the years she had spent mourning him, searching for meaning in his loss. If there was even a chance of understanding why he had died, if there was a way to make sense of the chaos, it felt like something she owed him. I'll take it, she said finally, her voice firm despite the knot of anxiety in her stomach. Slowly, she reached out and wrapped her fingers around the orb. The moment her skin touched its surface, a surge of energy coursed through her body. Visions flooded her mind, overwhelming and vivid. She saw galaxies forming and collapsing, civilizations rising and falling, timelines branching endlessly. Among the chaos, she glimpsed flashes of Daniel, alive and smiling in worlds where his fate had been different. Tears streamed down her face as she realized how vast and indifferent the universe truly was, but also how interconnected every life was. When the visions subsided, Lila found herself standing alone in the chamber. Cal was gone, leaving only the faint hum of the orb in her hands. She clutched it tightly, feeling the weight of what she had just experienced settle over her like a heavy blanket. She knew her life would never be the same. Lila stood frozen, clutching the crystalline orb tightly in her hands. Its glow had dimmed slightly since the vision stopped, but it still pulsed faintly, as if alive, responding to her emotions. Her mind raced, trying to process everything she had seen. Galaxies spinning, stars dying, civilizations rising and falling. It all felt too big, too overwhelming. And yet, among those vast cosmic events, she had glimpsed Daniel. Not just memories of him, but versions of him living different lives, making choices she couldn't imagine, existing in worlds that defied logic. She didn't know how long she stayed there, staring blankly at the orb, before the sound of movement snapped her out of her daze. Turning quickly, she scanned the chamber, half expecting Cale to reappear. But the room remained empty, silent except for the faint hum of energy emanating from the orb. Whatever presence had been there before was now gone, leaving her alone with her thoughts and the weight of what she had just experienced. Taking a shaky breath, Lila stepped away from the pedestal and moved toward the wall closest to her. She leaned against it, letting the cool stone steady her trembling legs. Her heart pounded in her chest, not just from fear but also from something deeper, a mix of curiosity, wonder, and determination. The visions had shown her things she couldn't explain, but they had also given her a sense of purpose. If this orb contained knowledge, real, tangible answers about the universe and Daniel's place in it, then maybe taking it was worth the risk. But where did she go from here? What was she supposed to do next? As if in response to her unspoken question, the air in front of her shimmered. At first, it looked like heat waves rising off pavement, but then the distortion solidified into something more defined. A glowing portal hovering inches above the ground. It rippled like liquid light, its surface shifting between colors, soft blues, silvers, and golds, that seemed to pulse in rhythm with the orb in her hands. Lila stared at the portal, her mouth dry. Was this part of the orb's power? Had touching it triggered this phenomenon? Or was it something else entirely, some kind of test left behind by Cale and its kind? You have to decide, a voice whispered. Not Cale's, but her own, echoing faintly in her mind as though the orb itself were speaking through her. Step forward, or walk away. Her grip tightened on the orb, knuckles whitening. Stepping forward meant leaving behind everything familiar, the cemetery, her quiet life, the comforting routines she clung to after Daniel's death. Walking away meant giving up the chance to understand the truth, to find closure, to honor his memory, in a way that mattered. For several long moments, she hesitated, torn between the two paths. Finally, she took a deep breath and approached the portal cautiously. The closer she got, the stronger the pull became. Not physical, but emotional, as if the orb and the portal together were calling to her on a level she couldn't resist. Reaching out tentatively, she touched the surface of the portal with her free hand. It felt warm, almost inviting, like sunlight on skin. But beneath that warmth was a strange sensation, as though her fingers were brushing against countless possibilities, endless outcomes stretching out in every direction. She pulled her hand back quickly, startled by the intensity of it. "What happens if I go through?" she murmured, glancing down at the orb. There was no answer, no guiding voice to reassure her, just the steady glow of the crystal and the swirling light of the portal. Summoning her courage, Lila squared her shoulders and stepped closer. She told herself she wasn't doing this recklessly. She was doing it for Daniel, for the man who had loved her, who had believed in her even when she doubted herself. If there was any chance of understanding why he had died, or of finding a way to keep his memory alive in a meaningful way, she owed it to him to take this step. With one last glance over her shoulder at the empty chamber, she stepped into the portal. The world dissolved around her instantly. Colors blurred together, sounds faded into silence, and the sensation of falling overwhelmed her senses. Yet it wasn't frightening. It was exhilarating, like being swept up in a current too, powerful to fight. Images flashed past her vision, fragments of places and times she couldn't comprehend, towering cities made of glass and metal, forests glowing with bioluminescent plants, skies filled with multiple suns. Each scene passed too quickly to grasp, fully, leaving only impressions burned into her mind. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the chaos stopped. Lila stumbled forward, catching herself on hands and knees as reality snapped back into focus. Blinking rapidly, she looked around, trying to make sense of her surroundings. She was no longer in the underground chamber. Instead, she found herself standing in a vast open space that seemed to stretch endlessly in every direction. The ground beneath her feet was smooth and metallic, reflecting her image like a distorted mirror. Above her, the sky, or what passed for a sky, was a swirling mass of colors constantly shifting and changing. It reminded her of the auroras she had seen in pictures, but magnified 1,000 times, filling her entire field of vision. In the distance, structures rose from the horizon, tall, spindly towers that seemed to grow organically from the landscape, rather than being built. They pulsed with light, their surfaces covered in patterns that matched the alien symbols she had seen in the chamber. Closer to her, smaller objects floated in midair, spinning lazily as if caught in an invisible breeze. Some resembled tools or devices, while others looked more like art pieces, intricate and delicate. Lila stood slowly, clutching the orb to her chest. Despite the beauty of the scene, she felt small, insignificant. This place wasn't meant for humans. It was beyond human comprehension, a realm designed for beings far greater than herself. And yet, she had been brought here. Why? Before she could dwell on the question, a new sound reached her ears. Footsteps. Turning sharply, she saw a figure approaching from one of the floating platforms nearby. It wasn't Kale, though it shared similarities with the being she had met earlier. Its form shimmered with the same liquid metal quality, and its eyes glowed faintly, though this time in a pale green instead of blue. Around its neck hung a pendant shaped like a spiral, glowing softly in time with its movements. "Welcome," the figure said, its voice resonating in her mind like Kale's had. Unlike Kale, however, this being radiated a sense of calm authority, as though it were accustomed to making decisions that affected entire worlds. "Where am I?" Lila asked, her voice barely above a whisper. She hated how fragile she sounded, but she couldn't help it. This place was unlike anything she had ever imagined. "You are in the Nexus," the figure replied. "A meeting point for those who seek knowledge and those who guard it. Few humans have come here before you, and fewer still have returned." The word returned sent a chill down Lila's spine. "What does that mean?" she asked, her voice firmer this time. "Am I trapped here?" The figure tilted its head, studying her with an expression that might have been amusement or pity. "Not trapped, no. But your journey will not be easy. The orb you carry holds truths that can alter your understanding of existence. To wield such knowledge requires sacrifice." "What kind of sacrifice?" Lila pressed, her grip tightening on the orb. She didn't like the sound of that. Sacrifice implied loss, and she had already lost so much. "That depends on you," the figure said cryptically. "Every choice carries consequences. Every action ripples outward, affecting countless lives, including your own." Lila frowned, frustration bubbling up inside her. "Why can't you just tell me what to do? Give me answers instead of riddles?" The figure smiled, or at least its expression shifted in a way that suggested amusement. "Answers are easy," it said. "Understanding them is harder. You must trust yourself, Lila Dawson. Trust the connection you share with the orb, and with the man whose memory led you here." At the mention of Daniel, Lila's throat tightened. She wanted to ask more, to demand clarity. But the figure raised a hand, silencing her before she could speak. "Your time here is limited," it continued. "When you are ready, follow the path marked by the symbols. They will guide you to what you seek. But remember, not all truths are kind." With that, the figure turned and walked away, disappearing into the swirling colors of the sky. Lila watched it go, her mind racing. She felt torn between gratitude and irritation. Gratitude for being given a chance to uncover answers, and irritation at the lack of straightforward guidance. Taking a deep breath, she looked down at the orb in her hands. Its glow had brightened slightly, as if encouraging her to move forward. Slowly, she began walking, following the trail of symbols etched into the reflective ground. Each step felt heavier than the last, as though gravity itself was testing her resolve. As she walked, the environment around her shifted subtly. The colors in the sky grew darker, tinged with shades of violet and crimson. The floating objects became fewer and farther between, replaced by jagged shapes that looked almost like shards of broken glass suspended in midair. The air grew colder, carrying with it a faint scent of ozone. Despite the growing unease, Lila kept moving. She didn't know what lay ahead, but she knew one thing for certain. She couldn't turn back now, not after coming so far. And somewhere, deep within her, she felt a spark of hope, a belief that maybe, just maybe, she would find the answers she had been searching for all along. Lila paused at the threshold of the vast library, her breath catching in her throat. It was unlike anything she had ever seen, or even imagined. Shelves upon shelves stretched endlessly in every direction, curving upward like ribbons of light, frozen mid-motion. Each shelf was lined with crystalline objects that looked like books but glowed faintly with their own inner illumination. Their colors shifted constantly, creating an ethereal dance of blues, greens, purples, and golds. Floating platforms hovered at varying heights, connected by streams of golden energy that pulsed rhythmically, almost like heartbeats. Above her, holographic projections displayed swirling patterns of alien symbols and intricate star maps, as if the universe itself were being mapped out in real time. The air hummed softly, carrying a sense of calm yet overwhelming power. She tightened her grip on the orb, which seemed to pulse in response, its glow syncing with the lights around her. For a moment she wondered if the orb was guiding her, drawing her deeper into this impossible place. But where did it want her to go? And what would she find when she got there? Taking a tentative step forward, Lila felt the ground beneath her feet shift slightly, as though it were alive. She glanced down and saw that the metallic surface rippled like water, reflecting her image back at her, but not quite accurately. Her reflection looked older, wiser, somehow more composed than she felt. It startled her enough to make her take another step quickly, breaking the connection. Focus, she whispered to herself, trying to steady her nerves. You've come this far. Keep going. The path ahead wasn't clear, at least not in the traditional sense. There were no signs or markers pointing her toward a specific destination. Instead, the symbols etched into the floating platforms seemed to guide her subtly, glowing brighter whenever she moved closer to them. Trusting her instincts and perhaps the orb, she began stepping from one platform to the next, letting the golden streams of energy lift her gently between levels. As she moved deeper into the library, she noticed something strange. Some of the crystalline books appeared to react to her presence. When she passed certain shelves, the glowing crystals would brighten momentarily before dimming again. It was almost as if they recognized her, or maybe the orb she carried. One book in particular caught her eye. It floated away from its shelf, hovering directly in front of her. Its glow shifted rapidly through colors before settling on a deep blue. Hesitantly, Lila reached out to touch it. As soon as her fingers brushed its surface, images flooded her mind once more. This time focused entirely on Daniel. She saw flashes of his life, childhood memories of him playing in a backyard, teenage, years spent tinkering with old radios and computers, college days where he laughed freely with friends. Then came moments they had shared together, their first date, their wedding day, quiet evenings spent reading side by side. But among these familiar scenes were others she didn't recognize, alternate versions of Daniel living completely different lives, making choices she couldn't have predicted. In one vision, he was an astronaut, standing on the surface of Mars, gazing up at Earth. In another, he was an artist, painting vibrant murals across city walls. Each version of him radiated happiness, purpose, fulfillment. Tears pricked at Lila's eyes as she realized how much potential he had possessed, and how abruptly it had been cut short. The visions faded, leaving her staring at the now dim crystal in her hands. She clutched it tightly, feeling both comforted and devastated by what she had seen. Was this the knowledge the orb promised? A glimpse into the infinite possibilities of existence? If so, it was beautiful, but also unbearably painful. Before she could dwell on it further, a new sound drew her attention. A low hum, growing louder as she turned toward its source. Following the noise, she stepped onto another floating platform, which carried her higher into the library. Here, the shelves gave way to open space, dominated by a single massive structure at the center. It resembled a tree, but instead of leaves, its branches held countless orbs similar to the one she carried. They glowed softly, each one pulsing, with its own unique rhythm. Standing near the base of the tree-like structure was another figure, not Kale, nor the green-eyed being who had greeted her earlier, but someone entirely new. This one was shorter, with skin that shimmered like opal and eyes that sparkled like starlight. It wore flowing robes made of translucent material that shifted colors with every movement. "You seek understanding," the figure said, its voice resonating within Lila's mind. Unlike the others, this voice carried a warmth that felt almost maternal. But understanding comes at a cost. "I know," Lila replied, her voice steadier than she expected. "I've been told that already." The figure nodded, tilting its head slightly. "And yet you continue, that takes courage." It gestured toward the tree-like structure. "This is the repository of paths. Every orb here represents a choice, a possibility explored or abandoned. Together they form the tapestry of existence." Lila approached cautiously, her gaze drawn to the orbs. Some glowed brightly, while others flickered weakly. A few were dark, as if extinguished. She wondered what it meant for an orb to go dark, and whether Daniel's fate might be represented somewhere among them. "What happens if I choose wrong?" she asked, turning back to the figure. "If I pick the wrong path?" "There is no wrong path," the figure replied gently. "Only paths that lead to growth or stagnation. The consequences of your choices will ripple outward, affecting not just yourself but those around you. But remember, even stagnation can teach valuable lessons." Lila frowned, absorbing the words. She wanted answers, clarity, closure. But everything here seemed designed to force her to confront ambiguity, to accept that some questions might never have simple solutions. Reaching out hesitantly, she touched one of the glowing orbs hanging from the tree. Instantly, she was engulfed in another wave of visions. This time, the images weren't personal. They showed humanity as a whole. She saw civilizations rising and falling, wars fought over resources, discoveries that changed the course of history. She saw kindness and cruelty, innovation and destruction, hope and despair intertwined like threads in a complex weave. Through it all, she sensed a recurring theme: the delicate balance between progress and self-destruction. Humanity teetered constantly on the edge, always striving forward but often blind to the dangers lurking just ahead. And behind it all, she felt the presence of watchers, beings like Kale and the ones she had met here, guiding events subtly, nudging humanity toward better outcomes without revealing themselves fully. When the visions ended, Lila staggered backward, clutching the orb tightly. Her mind reeled with the weight of what she had seen. Humanity's story was both inspiring and terrifying, full of potential but burdened by flaws. How could anyone bear such knowledge and still live a normal life? "You carry great responsibility now," the figure said softly. "The orb you hold contains fragments of this repository. It will guide you, but only if you let it." Lila looked down at the orb in her hands, its glow steady and reassuring. She understood now why Kyle had warned her about the risks. Knowledge like this could change everything, or destroy her if she wasn't careful. Yet she couldn't bring herself to regret taking it, not when it offered even the smallest chance of understanding Daniel's death and honoring his memory. "I'll do my best," she said finally, her voice firm despite the turmoil inside her. "I won't waste this." The figure smiled, or at least its expression softened in a way that suggested approval. "Then your journey continues. Follow the light, Lila Dawson. It will lead you home." With that, the figure stepped back, dissolving into the shimmering air. Left alone once more, Lila took a deep breath and began retracing her steps through the library. The glowing symbols guided her back toward the entrance, where the portal awaited. She didn't know what lay ahead when she returned to her world, but she knew one thing for certain: she wouldn't be the same person who had entered the tunnel beneath Daniel's grave. Lila stood at the edge of the portal, her heart pounding in her chest. She looked back one last time at the vast glowing library that had revealed so much, and yet left so many questions unanswered. The towering shelves, the shimmering orbs, the endless streams of knowledge. They all seemed to whisper softly, urging her to stay, to learn more, to dig deeper into the mysteries they held. But something inside her knew it was time to leave. The crystalline orb in her hands pulsed gently, as if agreeing with her decision. Its steady glow felt comforting now, familiar, like an old friend who had been with her through every step of this journey. She tightened her grip on it, drawing strength from its presence. Whatever awaited her on the other side of the portal, she would face it head on. She had come too far to turn back now. Taking a deep breath, Lila stepped forward and crossed the threshold. The sensation of falling returned instantly, though it wasn't frightening this time. It was exhilarating, like being carried by a river of light. Colors swirled around her, forming fleeting images of galaxies, planets, and civilizations. She caught glimpses of Daniel again, smiling warmly, his eyes filled with love and encouragement. It was almost as if he were telling her she'd made the right choice, that she was strong enough to handle whatever came next. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the swirling chaos stopped. Lila stumbled slightly as her feet landed on solid ground. Blinking rapidly, she looked around and realized she was back in the underground chamber where her journey had started. The pedestal stood empty, its surface cold and lifeless without. The orb. The strange symbols carved into the wall still glowed faintly, but their light seemed dimmer now, as if they had fulfilled their purpose. For a moment, she simply stood there, trying to process everything that had happened. She had traveled to another realm, seen visions of alternate realities, and touched fragments of universal knowledge. And yet, here she was, standing in the same quiet chamber beneath Daniel's grave. Nothing had changed, except her. Her mind buzzed with thoughts and emotions, each one vying for attention. She thought about the repository of paths, the infinite possibilities represented by the glowing orbs, and the delicate balance between progress and destruction. She thought about Daniel, the man he had been, the lives he might have lived, and the circumstances surrounding his death. Most of all, she thought about the responsibility she now carried. The orb in her hands wasn't just a relic. It was a key to understanding truths most people couldn't even imagine. And with that understanding came the burden of deciding how, or whether, to share it. Lila glanced down at the orb, its glow steady and reassuring. "What do I do now?" she whispered aloud, half expecting it to respond. But it remained silent, its light unwavering. She knew she couldn't stay here forever. Slowly, she made her way back toward the tunnel that led upward, clutching the orb tightly against her chest. Each step felt heavier than the last, not because of physical weight, but because of the enormity of what she had experienced. By the time she reached the hatch opening, her legs ached, and her breath came in shallow gasps. Pushing aside the fatigue, she climbed up carefully, emerging into the cool evening air of the cemetery. The sun had dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the gravestones. The once familiar landscape now felt foreign, altered by the perspective she had gained. Lila walked slowly back to Daniel's grave, her boots crunching softly on the gravel path. Fresh yellow daisies lay scattered near the base of the stone, untouched since she had placed them earlier that day. Kneeling down, she brushed away stray leaves and dirt, tidying the space one final time. As she worked, tears welled up in her eyes, blurring her vision. For 3 years, she had come here, seeking answers, clinging to memories of Daniel as a way to cope with his loss. Now she finally understood that his death hadn't been meaningless. It had been part of a larger pattern, a ripple effect caused by humanity's growing awareness of forces beyond comprehension. And while that knowledge didn't erase her grief, it gave her a sense of purpose. "I'll keep looking," she murmured, placing a hand gently on the gravestone. "I'll honor you the best way I know how." With that, she stood up, brushing dirt off her knees. The orb pulsed softly, in her hands as if responding to her resolve. Taking a deep breath, she turned and began walking toward the cemetery gates. She didn't know exactly what she would do next, but she knew she couldn't go back to her old life. Not completely. Too much had changed. Over the following weeks, Lila settled into a new routine. During the day, she continued working at her job as a librarian, helping patrons find books and resources. But in her free time, she devoted herself to studying the orb. She spent hours poring over its glow, letting the visions wash over her, piecing together fragments of knowledge bit by bit. Some of it was incomprehensible, abstract concepts that defied human logic. Other parts were clearer, offering insights into history, science, and philosophy that challenged everything she thought she knew. At first, she kept her discoveries to herself, unsure whom to trust or how to explain what she had found. But eventually, she began documenting her experiences, writing them down in a journal she kept hidden under her bed. She described the alien beings she had met, the repository of paths, and the glimpses of alternate realities she had seen. She wrote about Daniel, too, about the man he had been and the versions of him she had encountered in the orb's visions. Writing became a form of therapy, a way to process the overwhelming amount of information flooding her mind. One evening, as she sat at her kitchen table flipping through her notes, an idea struck her. What if she shared her findings, not all at once, but gradually, carefully? If humanity was teetering on the edge of self-destruction, maybe it needed guidance now more than ever. Maybe the knowledge contained within the orb could help steer people toward better choices, even if only indirectly. Inspired, Lila began crafting short essays based on her research. She avoided mentioning aliens or portals outright, instead framing her ideas as philosophical musings or speculative theories. She posted them online under a pseudonym, sharing them with forums dedicated to science, metaphysics, and futurism. To her surprise, the essays gained traction quickly, sparking debates and discussions among readers. Some dismissed her ideas as nonsense, but others embraced them, praising her unique perspective and thought-provoking insights. Encouraged by the response, Lila expanded her efforts. She started attending local lectures and conferences, presenting her theories in person. Though she never revealed the full extent of her experiences, she wove elements of what she had learned into her talks, subtly nudging audiences toward broader ways of thinking. Over time, she built a small but dedicated following, people who saw her as a voice of reason in a chaotic world. Through it all, she kept Daniel close to her heart. His memory fueled her determination, reminding her why she had embarked on this journey in the first place. Whenever doubt crept in, she returned to the cemetery, sitting quietly by his grave and reflecting on how far she had come. The orb always accompanied her, its glow a constant reminder of the connection they shared, even across dimensions. Months passed, and Lila's influence grew steadily. Her essays and presentations inspired others to think critically about humanity's role in the universe, fostering conversations that transcended borders, cultures, and ideologies. She knew she couldn't change the world overnight, but she believed that every small step mattered. Every ripple counted, and somewhere, far beyond the reach of human understanding, Cale watched silently, hopeful yet wary of what the future might hold. Lila stood at the edge of the cemetery, gazing up at the star-filled sky. It was late evening and the world around her felt still, almost timeless. The air carried a slight chill, but it wasn't unpleasant. It matched the calm resolve she had come to embrace. For months now, she had been navigating uncharted territory, balancing her ordinary life with the extraordinary knowledge she carried. Tonight, though, there was something different in the air, something final. She glanced down at the crystalline orb cradled in her hands. Its light pulsed softly, slower than usual, as if mirroring her own contemplative mood. Ever since returning from the Nexus, the orb had been both a guide and a companion, revealing glimpses of truths that stretched far beyond human comprehension. But tonight, it seemed quieter, more subdued, almost like it was preparing for something. Walking slowly, Lila made her way back to Daniel's grave. The path was familiar by now, etched into her memory after countless visits. Each step brought a mix of emotions, sadness for what she had lost, gratitude for what she had gained, and determination to keep moving forward. When she reached his gravestone, she knelt down carefully, brushing away stray leaves and straightening the yellow daisies she had placed earlier that day. For a long moment, she simply sat there, letting the silence envelop her. This place had become sacred to her, not just because it marked Daniel's resting place, but because it was where everything had begun. The hatch, the tunnel, the alien chamber, all of it had started here, buried beneath the soil next to his name. And now, standing on the cusp of whatever came next, she felt drawn back to this spot, as if completing a circle. "I don't know if you can hear me," she whispered, her voice steady despite the lump in her throat. "But I want you to know, I haven't given up. Not on us, not on the things we used to dream about. You always said I could do anything if I put my mind to it. Well, I'm trying, Daniel. I'm really trying." Her words hung in the air, carried away by the gentle breeze. She didn't expect an answer, not out loud anyway, but she felt a sense of peace wash over her. Maybe it was just her imagination, or maybe it was something deeper, a connection that transcended death itself. Either way, it gave her strength. As she sat there, the orb began to glow brighter, its light shifting subtly between hues of blue and silver. Startled, Lila looked down at it, wondering what it meant. Had she triggered something? Was it responding to her thoughts? Then, without warning, the ground beneath her trembled slightly. Not violently, but enough to make her freeze, her heart skipping a beat. Slowly, she turned her head, scanning the cemetery for any sign of movement. Nothing seemed out of place. The gravestones stood silent, the trees swayed gently in the wind, and the stars twinkled above as they always did. But then she noticed it. a faint shimmer near the base of Daniel's gravestone. At first it looked like heat waves rising off pavement, but as she watched, the distortion solidified into a shape, a figure, tall and slender, with glowing eyes and skin that shimmered like liquid metal. It wasn't Kale, nor any of the other beings she had encountered before. This one was different, radiating an aura of calm authority that made her feel both awestruck and comforted. "Lila Dawson," the figure said, its voice resonating softly in her mind rather than her ears. "Your journey has brought you far." She stood quickly, clutching the orb tightly against her chest. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly despite her best efforts to stay composed. "I am called Ellen," the being replied, tilting its head slightly. "I represent those who watch over your kind. We have observed your progress with interest." "My progress?" Lila echoed, frowning. "What do you mean?" Ellen gestured toward the orb in her hands. "You carry knowledge few humans are meant to possess. Yet you have used it wisely, sharing fragments of truth to guide others without overwhelming them. That is no small feat." Lila hesitated, unsure how to respond. She hadn't thought of herself as doing anything particularly remarkable. She was simply following her instincts, trying to honor Daniel's memory while making sense of what she had learned. But hearing Ellen describe her actions as significant gave her pause. "Why are you here?" she asked finally, her curiosity outweighing her fear. "What happens now?" Ellen's expression softened, though it was hard to read emotions on such an alien face. "Your role is nearing its end," it said gently. "The orb has fulfilled its purpose in your hands. It is time for it to return to the nexus where it belongs." Lila's heart sank. She hadn't realized until that moment how much she had come to rely on the orb, not just as a source of knowledge but as a link to Daniel, to the journey they had shared. Letting it go felt like losing him all over again. "But what about me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "What happens to me after this?" "You will continue as you have," Ellen replied. "The insights you have gained cannot be taken from you. They will remain with you, shaping your choices and guiding your path. Your task is not to hold the orb forever, but to use what it has taught you to influence the world around you." Tears welled up in Lila's eyes, but she blinked them back, determined to stay strong. "And Daniel?" she asked quietly. "Will I ever understand why he had to die?" Ellen paused, studying her with those glowing eyes. "His death was a consequence of forces beyond anyone's control," it said finally. "But his life, and yours, has meaning. Together, you have played a part in humanity's ongoing story. Remember that." With those words, Ellen extended a hand, palm upward. The orb in Lila's hands began to pulse rapidly, its light growing brighter and brighter, until she could hardly look at it. Reluctantly, she placed it in Ellen's grasp, feeling a strange emptiness settle over her as soon as it left her fingertips. The instant the orb touched Ellen's hand, it dissolved into a cascade of light, streaming upward toward the stars. Lila watched, mesmerized, as the lights merged with the constellations above, becoming indistinguishable from the night sky. For a moment, she thought she saw Daniel's face among the stars, smiling down at her with love and pride. When she turned back to thank Ellen, the being was gone, leaving her alone once more in the quiet cemetery. The only sound was the rustling of leaves and the distant chirping of crickets. Clutching her arms tightly around herself, Lila took a deep breath, feeling both lighter and heavier than before. She knew her life would never be the same. The journey she had embarked upon had changed her in ways she couldn't fully articulate, but she also knew she wasn't alone. Whether through the memories of Daniel, the lessons she had learned, or the subtle presence of those who watched, over humanity she carried within her everything she needed to keep moving forward. As she walked away from the grave, heading toward the gates of the cemetery, she glanced up at the stars one last time. Somewhere out there, beyond the reach of human understanding, the orb continued its eternal journey, a beacon of hope and knowledge in an infinite universe. And somewhere inside her, Lila felt ready to do the same.